Marina stood at her parents' front door, her heart racing. She had rehearsed her words countless times, but now they escaped her mind entirely. Her father, John, and her mother, Clara, initially welcomed her warmly, but their demeanor changed when Richard stepped forward. Dressed in worn jeans and with hair that looked unkempt for weeks, he smiled politely and offered his hand for a handshake, but neither parent accepted it. Stunned, Marina tried to brush off their disapproving stares as she led Richard inside, hoping they would at least give him a fair chance. From the very beginning, Marina hid one important detail. Richard was homeless. They had met almost a year ago when she noticed him reading a tattered library book on a park bench. Intrigued by his gentle demeanor, she struck up a conversation. Over time, she learned his story. After being fired, he lost his apartment and moved from one shelter to another. Despite the difficulties, he remained kind and smart, which won Marina's heart. Yet she was afraid that her parents might judge him, and her intuition did not fail her. At dinner, her parents asked Richard in sharp and formal terms about his work and living conditions. Richard explained that he had been taking breaks from work and living where he could, trying to soften the uncomfortable truth. John and Clara's eyes narrowed. After that night, Marina's phone calls became more insistent and angry. In one call, her mother hissed that he wasn't good enough for her. Marina tried to defend Richard, but they refused to listen further. Months passed. Marina clung to Richard despite her parents' insistence that she break off the relationship. He remained patient and never snapped at their cruel words. Finally, an invitation arrived in John and Clara's mailbox. Marina and Richard were going to get married. They decided it was time to put an end to this. At the pre-wedding party, Clara threatened her daughter that she would disown her if she married a homeless man. John nodded in agreement. Heartbroken but determined, Marina supported Richard. On the wedding day, John and Clara arrived full of indignation. The ceremony took place in a luxurious estate, which puzzled them. How could a homeless person afford such a place? Marina must have spent all her savings, her parents thought. Near the garden, they noticed their daughter in a wedding dress, beaming despite the tension. Richard was dressed in the same ragged clothes they always saw him in, as if he had no intention of getting married. John, his voice shaking with anger, made his final demand. "If you marry him, you will never see us again." Marina just sighed. She and Richard had been expecting this ultimatum. Then Richard approached them with a sealed envelope. He handed it to John and said, "We're giving you one chance to see who I really am. If after this you still reject me, then so be it." Without another word, they disappeared behind the stone arches of the estate, leaving John and Clara alone with their confusion. Clara convinced John to open the envelope. The note contained cryptic instructions. "Go to the largest tree in the area, dig beneath the roots, and you will see the truth." John found a shovel leaning against a tree. Irritated and suspicious, he almost threw away the instructions, but Clara's curiosity got the better of him. They carefully dug until they discovered a small wooden box. Inside was a photograph of Marina and Richard smiling in a modest restaurant, as well as an envelope stuffed with money, thousands of dollars in crisp bills. Their jaws dropped. Where did this money come from? John noticed a handwritten note on the last bill. "Go to the master bedroom to get the final answers." Confused, they hurried inside the mansion. Walking through the corridors, they found the master bedroom. There was another framed photograph on the bed. It depicted an unfamiliar man, woman, and little boy dressed formally. There was a folded letter glued to the frame. Clara read the letter aloud. It provided a detailed account of Richard's past. He grew up in a wealthy family that put incredible pressure on him. Excellent grades, education, and a future as a high-ranking executive. No matter what his achievements were, his parents criticized him. The tension grew until Richard, tired of the stifling demands, left the house. His parents completely disowned him, refusing any contact or financial support. He found himself homeless without any protection or support. Over time, he learned to survive on the streets, relying on shelters and the random kindness of strangers. He vowed to never again let money or prejudice control his relationships. However, there was more to the letter. Tragedy struck. Richard's parents died suddenly in an accident, and he learned from their lawyer that he was the sole heir to the enormous fortune of this mansion and all the funds he had once refused. But the experience changed Richard. He wanted people to love him for who he was, not for his wealth. That's why he continued to live almost like a homeless person, observing who treated him like a human being and who rejected him. He hid his inheritance even from Marina's parents to see if they could look beyond his ragged appearance. Then came a deep realization. Although John and Clara were cruel, he understood that they wanted to protect their daughter. They wanted the best for her, just as Richard had wanted his own parents to show him unconditional love. The letter ended with a final message. Today I hope that we can become a real family. It's not money that connects us, but only love, respect, and acceptance. If you are ready to see me as a man and not a stereotype, then come celebrate with us. By the time Clara finished reading, both she and John were in tears. They realized that they had allowed their prejudices and fear for their daughter's future to turn into cruelty. Looking at each other, they recognized their mistake. Without thinking, they ran out into the street just in time for the ceremony to begin. Quiet music echoed through the garden as guests sat in rows on chairs. Richard stood at the altar, dressed in a tailored suit and polished shoes. Marina beamed next to him. John and Clara had no idea how charming and confident Richard was when he wasn't hiding behind his tattered clothes, and they saw genuine warmth and gratitude in his eyes when he noticed them stepping forward. Marina was the first to recite her vows, her voice quivering with excitement. She reminisced about the day she met Richard, highlighting his unwavering kindness and how it brought her more joy than she ever imagined. When it was Richard's turn, he gently took her hands and turned to John and Clara, who sat in the front row. I have something to explain to you both. While my letters conveyed much, I wanted to ensure that any confession you made was sincere and not influenced by wealth. I've experienced a life where money overshadowed love. I truly hope we can move forward as a family. He sighed deeply. John, Clara, I apologize for misleading you about my circumstances, but I believe you now understand that it's the heart that matters, not the bank account. My greatest desire is to care for Marina. I hope you can forgive me for letting you think I was penniless. I needed to know your true feelings. Trembling with emotion, John stood and approached the altar. He placed Marina's hand in Richard's with a respectful nod. You take care of our daughter, and we will strive to become the kind of family you never had, John said, feeling a sense of relief. Richard embraced him, a gesture John would never have permitted just weeks before. Clara wiped her tears, smiling through a mix of regret and newfound understanding. The ceremony concluded in an atmosphere of genuine joy. No one cared that Richard had once been homeless and was now wealthy. They were simply happy that two people in love had finally found support in a family that meant everything to them. Dear viewers, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Please share your opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support.